Welcome to the first episode of Season 4 of Stuck in the Sin Bin. We are so happy to be back and can't wait to get the ball rolling here. I'm your host, Michael McCormack, and as always, I'm joined alongside by Luke Owens, Matt Watling, and our fourth, Dylan McGlynn, is out this week's show because the Devils have made him sick to his stomach.
Poor guy.
All right, gentlemen.
Feel better, Dylan.
Let's get down to this week's power rankings. Coming in at number 5, this team will make your jaws drop. It's the San Jose Sharks.
Boo.
What a start to the season.
The Jaws reference? Come on.
Start to the season.
That was a good one.
The Sharks, they are pretty good. Winners of 3 of their last 4, and they found their way after an iffy start to the season. A lot of moving pieces with Carlson coming in, and it's taken some time, but he's found his own with the Sharks. And Brett Burns having an underrated season, 72 points in about 66 games, and that's a Norris caliber season, if not for Mark Giordano.
Oh, 100%. And number 4, we have Don Cherry's least favorite team, the Carolina Hurricanes. So these bunch of jerks are 8-1-1 in their last 10, and they're led by Jacob Slavin and Justin Falk, who are both averaging over 22 minutes of ice time, and Sebastian Aho just having a 75-point season.
Oh, just 75, nothing. Not a big deal.
Points
Not too bad.
or anything. 30-goal season. And at number 3, this team hasn't cooled off since their hot start to the season. It's the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, and they've got 3 guys at a point per game with Johnny Gaudreau, Elias Lindholm, and Sean Monahan, all with over 70 points in 66 games played. And they've got arguably the deepest defense in the league with Giordano, Hanifin, and Hamonic. Although their goaltending is questionable with David Rittich, they're really their leading goaltender at a .910 save percentage, which isn't really that good.
Yeah, Mike Smith is getting up there in age for sure.
.895 save percentage for Mike Smith, too.
Oof. At number 2, we have the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, the Bruins at number 2. They kind of started off the season a little bit shaky, a lot of injuries, but now they're healthy. Tuukka Rask is playing really well in net, and I really think they're poised for that deep playoff run. They're in that tough Atlantic Division, and they're handling it pretty well. And, I mean, they're deep, they're well-rounded, and they've got the veteran presence to do it. I think they're poised for a deep run.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they do against, and speaking of them, I am ecstatic to tell you guys that we have the Tampa Bay Lightning at number 1.
It's almost boring at this point. I mean, the Lightning are just so good this season. They're head and shoulders above everyone, but there's always going to be those questions of can they do it in the postseason? And obviously, Kucherov has just been unreal, 108 points to lead the NHL. Vasilevsky has been playing a little bit better of lately. He had a little bit of actually a rocky stretch. Even when they were winning games, he was allowing just a touch over 3 goals per game, but he settled down, and we'll see what happens come playoff time. That's always the question with this team.
Yeah, we see that that even though they did nothing at the trade deadline, that just shows that they have a lot of faith in their roster that they can go deep. And now we put the focus to Long Island, where the New York Islanders, while still playing solid hockey, have an important part of their schedule coming up. Turn it over to Matt. How crucial are these next few games for this team?
You know, they're so important. It starts, I believe, tomorrow night against Ottawa, who almost beat them yesterday. It took them to a shootout to beat the worst team, the AHL Ottawa Senators, a 5-4 shootout win, but I was just happy to see 4 goals scored by the Islanders, who've had some struggle scoring as of late.
Yeah, they've been a little bit mediocre lately, just 5-4-1 in their last 10, and it's interesting. If we were sitting here at the beginning of the season, I would have thought you were crazy that the Islanders are the best team of the 4 New York, New Jersey area teams, but they put together a really solid season. They're deep in scoring. They don't have that one guy that can go out and do it like a guy like JT they had last year, but they didn't make that big trade deadline splash. So it's going to be interesting to see how Trotz manages this team going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I really would have liked to see them add a big deadline guy. I would have liked to see Artemi Panarin, but he wasn't going anywhere with Columbus adding all those pieces, which we'll get to later. And other guys like Wayne Simmons for a 4th. I would like to see him. Mark Stone was for one of the biggest prospects in all of the NHL goes to Vegas. So there wasn't really a big market, but I would have liked to see them do something. But at the same time, you know, Lou's got a 5-year plan, so you got to trust the process and trust Lou.
And you know what I'm loving from the Islanders is their goaltending tandem. With Leonard has a 2.9 goals against average, a .927 save percentage. Thomas Greiss, 2.23 goals against average, .928 save percentage. That just shows that Mitch Korn has done an unbelievable job with this team, and you gotta like Matt, you gotta love that.
Mitch Korn's incredible. Once I heard that he was coming over, he's not even the goaltender coach anymore. He's like the director of goaltending. He's better than any kind of goaltending coach you can have. And then they brought in for goaltending coach was the Toronto Marlies, who won the Calder Cup last year in the AHL. Their goaltender coach now goes with Lou Lamoriello from the Leafs to the Islanders, and they've got really good coaching staff, a good base, and one of those guys that's really stepped up has been Michael Dal Cole. The Islanders are 14-5-2 while he's on the roster and while he plays games, and he was called up alongside Josh Ho-Sang only emergency, so temporary. Islanders fans don't get too excited about Joshua Sang. But Dal Cole's a really good player. He's only got 5 points in 21 games, but he's second in the league in expected goals percentage with 70%. The best, of course, is Mark Stone with 71%. So Dal Cole, he drives that third line, he drives possession, and does such a good job with guys like Filppula and Komarov.
Yeah, I'm loving what I'm also seeing from their defense too. It might be, not the best defense around, but Ryan Pollock is definitely
And Devon
carrying
Taves.
it. And Devon
Their
Taves.
money, man. College hockey. Shout out Dylan.
And that's all the time we have for now. But when we come back, we'll be discussing some Rangers and Devils hockey. Don't go away. You're watching Stuck in the Sin Bin on WTOP 10.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Hey guys, when we're not doing The Real Deal, what do you like to do in your free time?
Well, I like to watch WTOP 10 movies on demand.
Yeah, me too. They have such a wide variety of films that anybody on campus can watch.
And it's free.
And it's free.
How do I get to this movies on demand?
Well, all you have to do is go to WTOP10.com and click the Movies on Demand tab.
Hey, let's go watch one right now to review on our next show.
Back to Stuck in the Sin Bin. The Rangers, to no one's surprise, were sellers at this year's deadline. They unloaded Matt Zuccarello, a couple tears for that, and Kevin Hayes and Adam McQuaid. They have dropped their last 5 games and look to be in full tank mode. I don't know about you guys, but I think this is a good decision for the team. I've been saying lose for Hughes.
Oh yeah, big lose for Hughes guy. Exactly. That's what I was saying for the Islanders before the season started, but here we are, first place. Can't complain.
Islanders was last
Can't complain.
Why are we still talking about the Islanders?
It's not
needs to move on.
They're not going to be waiting for this much longer, but I think this says it all, is that Brendan Smith played forward the other night. The defenseman Brendan Smith, who was in the AHL last year because he was that rough. That's all there's to say.
Well, the one good thing I could say about the defense is the recent step up of Tony DeAngelo, who has been an absolute force on the defensive side of the game, and he has 24 points, 4 goals, 20 assists. And the one thing I'm loving from him is that Shattenkirk has had a bad season. And
he was hurt for a while too.
Yeah, aside from the whole team, I've seen that Tony DeAngelo has really filled his shoes pretty well for Shattenkirk being so bad, and I'm just loving that from him.
Yeah, one thing I've actually liked from the Rangers is they were a little bit too mediocre before the trade deadline. The trade deadline hits, and now they're losing. But at the same time, they kind of given their fans something to look forward to. Obviously, against the Lightning, they took them to overtime, maybe even a shootout. But you get to see all these young guys. They're a roster chock full of guys under the age of 25, and they're 16, 11, and 8 at home. So they're kind of giving their fans a little taste of something to come in the future with all those young guys.
Yeah, I think they should be excited about Brett Howden, Philip Hedl, the future for Buchnevich, Tony DeAngelo, like I mentioned. They have so many players under the age of 25.
It's 12 of their 18 skaters under the age of 25, which is insane.
Crazy.
Guys like Mika Zibanejad, Jimmy Vesey, Vladislav Nemestikov, Ryan Strome, former Islander again.
Even Zibanejad
Brendan
under
Lemieux.
25.
And that's impressive. Zibanejad coming from the Senators was a really good piece, and I like that trade. You get rid of Brassard, big contract. But for Zibanejad, he's so talented, and he's only 25 years old.
Only 20.
So he's entering his prime at a point per game, leading a rebuild. That's huge for this team.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that also shows that we're not so hell bent on drafting a center this year in the draft that we can focus more on, say, the winger side of the game or the offense.
I would even say the defense, because I think the defense for the Rangers,
they got to get defense.
The defense for the Rangers right now is barren. You've got Vladislav Kravtsov.
Oh,
how do you pronounce it?
It's Vitaly Kravtsov.
Vitaly Kravtsov, the big Russian winger who's been excellent, really good, and this team has a lot of good pieces coming up, so it'll take a couple years. They might need a goaltender of the future moving forward with Henrik Lundqvist being this old, but there's a lot of promise for this team, I think, within 3 or 4 years.
I'm really excited to see what they'll do in the next couple of years. And next up, we had the New Jersey Devils, who have been, according to Dylan, bleeping terrible. I know he had more to say with a lot more curse words in between, but they are, in fact, missing 7 of their starting players, so they are kind of set up for failure. What do you guys think about all this?
It's just been a lot of bad luck from the Devils. I mean, this was a team that made the playoffs last season, but we almost still didn't believe in them then. It seemed like they kind of got a couple of extra lucky bounces, and obviously when you have 2 guys producing, really 1 guy producing all the points for a team, you're not going to be successful going forward, especially when that guy's been injured for more than half the season this year. So these injuries are just starting to stack up. It's almost like a sick joke at this point.
And you talk about these injuries. Taylor Hall, the guy that's missed half the games, he's 4th in the team in points, with 37 and 33 games played, and he's missed half the season. Other guys, Nico Heischer's missing time right now. Miles Wood, Kyle Palmieri, John Quenneville, Pavel Zacha, Sammy Vatanen, and of course Taylor Hall, who I mentioned. Those are all guys that are starters and big guys in the lineups. And if you watch them play, they don't play very well. They really don't. They're not a great team anymore. Their goaltending has been flawed. Their defense is devoid of talent. And they're, again, if you watch the tape on them, they are not a good team.
Yeah, they're terrible, no good, very bad team. And I mean, they traded Kincaid at the deadline, and I mean, that just shows that they really are going for a tank right now, because if
you look at the video, sorry to interrupt you, but no one in front of the net on that play.
You're going to love this shootout goal right here. Corey Schneider putting up a real effort here.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, Corey Schneider has just been terrible.
He's been good in his last 5, though. He's been really strong in his last 5 games at, I think it's 920 save percentage, really strong.
But one thing I've liked from this team is you trade Kincaid, but you get a guy like Mackenzie Blackwood in there in goal.
Who's stepping up.
Their 2nd-round pick from a couple years ago. So you do get to see some of the young pieces there, but not the same extent as the Rangers like we talked about before.
And the fans thought they were taking in the right direction. And that's all we have for the Rangers and Devils talk, but when we come back, we'll be discussing some news from around the league. We'll be right back on Stuck in the Sin Bin.
Sit where you are now.
Most of us like to be out in the sun. That's why sunscreen and other safety measures are key to protecting your skin from aging and cancer. The FDA recommends using a sunscreen with an SPF of 15 or higher. Also, look for broad spectrum on the label. That means both harmful ultraviolet A and B rays are blocked. Remember, SPF plus broad spectrum equal healthy fun in the sun. Visit www.fda.gov/sunscreen for more information. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
I'm a lot more confident and a lot more sure of my abilities. At Oswego is where I really found myself and became the person I am. You work hard and you play hard. I love the environment of SUNY Oswego.
David Riche. I mean, they were shocking recovery of Tommy John survivor Nathan Eovaldi.
Simbin, the Columbus Blue Jackets were one of the biggest buyers at this year's trade deadline. They acquired a boatload of players, such as Matt Duchene, Ryan Dzingel, Keith Kincaid. However, with the addition of all this talent, they haven't quite put all the pieces together to make them look like they're going to go far in the playoffs. Boys, what can we make of all this, this funk that the Blue Jackets are in?
You know, I think 2-3 in their last 5 games, but you lose to Pittsburgh, you lose to Edmonton and Winnipeg. You can't lose to Edmonton. They're really not a good team. I mean, Mikko Koskinen, not a good goaltender, despite what his contract might say. But looking forward, and they need to start winning games, and it's tough. The next 5 games: Pittsburgh twice, the Islanders, Boston, Carolina, the Boston again, and with only 2 points out of the second wild card with a game in hand, they can make a push. But I think it's too little, too late again with the schedule they have remaining.
Yeah, it was an interesting move, I thought, because you're trying to win now before you lose all these guys, but at the same time, it's like they're still 2 games out of the wild card. It's not like they were front runners in their division. It's not like they were set to make the playoffs. If they miss the playoffs, this will be an absolute disaster. You're gonna let a guy like Bobrovsky walk, who hasn't even been playing that well. You're gonna let Panarin walk. These are all these guys that are gonna walk, and you're gonna look like fools in the front office.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like when we were talking about it before the show, that they had to go for it. There's like no reason that they that they have Panarin and Bobrovsky. Why not go for it? Why not get all these pieces and just go for the playoff run? They kind of have to.
I just disagree because you're compounding your problem. You're starting with a guy like Panarin who's going to walk. Bobrovsky will walk as well, and now Duchene, he can go anywhere, and he's not a guy. If Panarin and Bobrovsky walk, Duchene's not a guy that can lead a team. He's not good enough. You saw it in Colorado. You saw it in Ottawa. He's not a number 1 center. He's a good number 2, and I think he's a really talented player. But for this team, they have 2 draft picks in this upcoming draft. And at the start of the season, Corey Proman ranked them as the 25th best prospect pool. If they don't make it far, and if they don't win at least a playoff round, this team is set back several years, if not a decade.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully all that buying they did doesn't go to waste, like you said. After being called a bunch of jerks by Canadian icon Don Cherry, the Carolina Hurricanes have been an absolute wagon. They are 8-1-1 in their last 10 games and don't look to be slowing down anytime soon. Guys, did you ever see Carolina pulling off something as amazing as this recent tear?
I mean, we kind of saw it, going into the season, we thought this was a playoff team. They struggled out of the gates. They get all these celebrations, and maybe that was the secret for them. But to me, they're still a little bit too mediocre in a lot of standpoints. They don't have that number 1 guy. I mean, obviously they are. I don't know. I just think they're a little bit too thin to make a deep playoff run at this point. With how good the Eastern Conference has been, I don't think Carolina stacks up.
Yeah, I don't know. And right now they're the 3rd seed in the Metropolitan, and you look at them and I say, can they beat the Islanders? I don't think so. Can they beat the Penguins? No. Can they beat the Caps? No. They're a great story and just an interesting story coming out of them. And I think this kind of adds to their team of destiny kind of mentality with the celebrations is, according to Sarah Sivian from The Athletic, Peter Mrazek wanted a $1.5 million contract worth 1 year at the start of this free agency last year. And his agent wanted $2 million. But he basically was trying to sell himself and prove that he could be a starting goaltender. And you see how that's proved, and you just watch the team play, and they're so much fun to watch. I don't care what Don Cherry has to say. They're a fun team, and they're here to stay.
I honestly, we have a highlight tape that just shows that they can take Boston to overtime. And, I mean, a couple months ago, they couldn't even have, come close to beating Boston. And what they're doing now is they're coming back from being down 3-1 or 3-2, however many.
Not to mention those jerseys.
Oh, those jerseys are hot. Love these jerseys. They need to just wear these permanently now. Just go to Hartford.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it.
So I'm thinking, this team, they might make a magical playoff run like Vegas did, but if not, we'll just
And
have
Justin
to see.
Falk at the ripe age of 37's got 43 points. Ooh. Mr. Game 7's back.
The old guys can still get it done.
And we'll have to see if they keep this up for the last 16 games of the season. And yesterday, the NHL general managers held a meeting and approved concepts for rule changes regarding player safety. One of the changes discussed was to have players leave the ice immediately if they were to lose their helmet mid-play. If they don't, they receive a penalty. Guys, what can we make out of this potential rule change and others discussed?
I mean, it's a great rule change, obviously. We've seen it across sports, the 4 major sports. You've got to protect the heads, and I think this is the right call by the NHL. It's always been a gritty and a hard contact sport, but if you lose your helmet, you've got to stop playing because head injuries are just so prevalent. They're so in your face at this point. I think it's a smart move.
It's smart, but it's also just so awkward for gameplay. If a guy loses his helmet, he's not going down to block a shot. You know, he's doing what he can to avoid contact to the head. But in the end, I'm not going to be the old Don Cherry in the room and say, oh, you got to battle through the pain of concussions. No, you go slide over to the bench, and I like it. And a lot of these other rules that they were prefacing were just so ridiculous. Like I want them to fix overtime. I don't care about which side the face-off is for a power play. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and George Peros also said that the NHL is the one league in the entire world that doesn't have a rule for players losing their helmets, mid the flow of the play. And I mean, of course, we're going to let the viewers know later on in the year if any of these rules do come into fruition. And unfortunately, we have to end on a somber note. The NHL legend Ted Lindsay passed away Monday at the age of 93. He was Gordie Howe's line mate, but was also so much more. He ended his career with 851 points in 1,063 games. His legacy will forever be enshrined in the Hockey Hall of Fame and in the rafters at the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. The hockey community will keep the Lindsay family in their thoughts throughout this week.
Hey, President Stanley, what's your favorite television station?
I don't know. Hey, guys, what do you think?
My family and friends are always with me, no matter where I may be. Sharing stories from home helps me sustain my recovery from my mental and substance use disorder.
Hi, sweetheart.
Join the Voices for Recovery. Our families, our stories, our recovery.
For confidential information on mental and substance use disorders, including prevention and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Good evening and welcome to WTOP 10 Nightly News.
Total, Baldwin faces 32 charges.
Saturday, I went to Woodchuck Saloon.
Too much temperature change.
1310 meteorologist.
2 as well. Visions from Tanner Smith.
Go to 2-1.
With 6 and 10 on the year.
It's back and better than ever. One student can win up to $25 in cash. All on Oswego's favorite game show, Spin to Win! Every Sunday night at 9, only on WTOP 10 TV.
Welcome back to Stuck in the Sim Bin. Remember when the Buffalo Sabres went on that run earlier in the season and won 10 games in a row? Yeah, Luke is still living in those days for sure. And much like the last two teams we talked about, the Sabres have reverted to their old ways of being a hopeless team. Luke, do you concur?
That was a harsh intro.
I think it was fair. It was harsh but fair.
When I was writing the script, I was like, all right, maybe I should ease up a little bit.
Yeah. But you didn't.
I did it.
I'll remember that next week. But yeah, the Sabres, it's been a lot of blown leads, and we're going to roll the tape here. It's a game against Edmonton, a team that we talked about earlier. You cannot lose to the Oilers, and the Sabres did it after going up 3-1 in the first period. As we'll roll the tape here, they blew the lead against the Oilers, and it's been tough times lately. It's been some bad play in the front of the net, and it's almost been the classic Sabres problem. They cannot find that goaltender. They can't find that Ryan Miller, and obviously a guy like Ryan Miller does not come around every day, but Carter Hutton and Linus Ullmark both have been struggling lately. You see on the second goal here, Ullmark it goes right through his legs. So he's just had a lot of issues, a lot of struggles, and the defense in front of him has played well, but they've played over their heads at times, and they've been out of position.
Yeah, are we going to see Pominville's one-timer that he
saved
caught?
When Pominville saved his shot
and saved it?
But going back to this defense, when Marco Scandella and Rasmus Ristolainen are your top D pair, that's not a top pair caliber team or D pair for a playoff team. Right. It's just not. And Rasmus Dahlin will grow into that, but for right now, they don't have a number one defenseman. I think that's their biggest issue alongside the guys that they were getting secondary scoring from aren't scoring anymore. Guys like Middlestat, guys like Pominville. They've regressed so
Oposo,
much. Oposo as well. And now you see what happens when that kind of bottoms out.
Yeah, it's very top heavy. Like you said, it's Skinner, Reinhardt, Eichel. That's who it is for the Sabres. And like you said, the defense is going to grow into itself. And I think Brandon Montour was a sneaky great pickup at the trade deadline.
Montour pickup.
I think Montour and Dahlin can be great down the stretch. But I don't know what fans were expecting this season, because we're talking about a team that was the worst team in the NHL last season going into this year. And they were fighting. They're still in the playoff race. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're 9 points out. But it's an improvement from last year, and the Fire Housley crowd, I think, needs to be silenced, because
yeah, that's just
it's
ridiculous.
year 2 of a deep rebuild, and you have the pieces. You see the pieces. You see the progress being made. You just got to be patient.
Right. Yeah, and I think like you could see that in the future, that the defense with this team is going to be really, really good, because you have Ristolainen, like you said, Montour. You have Dahlin. That's 3 like really good defensemen that you have for the future of your team. I think fans just need to like. Chill.
I agree 100%.
They just need to chill.
And then you look at guys like through the draft that are coming up. They have some talent, nonetheless. I mean, you look at this team. Add one more guy to solidify a top 4 defense. Add 1 or 2 more depth guys that can add to scoring punch. And maybe Casey Middlestat is that guy. You saw it last year towards the end of the season. He scored a lot. So if he can kind of tap into that, Sam Reinhart is stepping into his own. A lot of these guys,
of the brothers.
for now, can't trust the Reinhardt family when it comes to hockey. But nonetheless, I think this is a team that has the foundation to be a really good team. And Housley's a good coach. He's real deal, Barry Trotz level. Coached under Barry Trotz, I believe, in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I honestly thought this team was going to make the playoffs this season too. While the NHL trade deadline was earlier last week, we've had some time to look at these new rosters. With that said, who has been your trade deadline winners?
You know, I got to go with Vegas. When you add the best player in this class, in Mark Stone, and you don't lose any roster pieces, that's huge.
But Eric Brandstrom, though. Eric Brandstrom.
But you know, you bring that up, but George McPhee, the GM of Vegas, he added so many picks through the expansion draft that you're not missing him. And also, hot take a little bit, when Pittsburgh won the Stanley Cup without Chris Letang, I thought that proved to me that teams can win without elite defensemen.
Yeah.
Right, and my winner, first of all, music to my ears to hear Matt compliment the Golden Knights.
That
We've
really
come very far.
That really
as a show.
hurt to say, but I had to
my
do
winner
it.
for the trade
He's all
deadline
grown up now.
has to be the Nashville Predators. They went out and made moves to keep pace in the West. The West was out there making moves while the East was kind of sitting there. And they get Michael Granlund, which in my opinion is an upgrade over Fiala for sure.
That's a steal.
And then obviously Simmons, he's going to help out a lot on that power play unit for Nashville.
I love Wayne Simmons. I'm a huge fan of his. I love his game. I think it transfers so well in the playoffs. He's one of those guys that's going to perform in the playoffs for you. Great power play guy, as you said. And the only reason he hasn't performed well in Philly this year is because they signed James Van Riemsdyk.
Right.
And he kind of took that place for Wayne
spot.
Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, you got like Subban and Yossi Clappers from the point. Simmons is 100% going to clean up that loose garbage.
Oh, man, they're going to be so good.
David Poile for Nashville, he has to be the boldest GM in the NHL. Time and time again, we see him at the trade deadline go out and make these big moves for Nashville. They want to keep competing. That one year was not a fluke making it to the Stanley Cup, and it's going to be a tough road ahead, just from the top. But from the bottom of the West, Nashville can do it.
Yeah, but you also wonder, making those bold moves, does it backfire? You know, they trade for a guy like Ryan Hartman. You trade a first-round draft pick last year, and now you're shipping him away for Wayne Simmons.
Yeah.
Like, that's a one-year rental that you spent a first-round pick on for a guy who's like a third-line forward.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll actually end up like keeping Wayne Simmons at the end of the season, because he is going to get a boatload of money.
Good thing about Granlund, though, is he is under contract for next season going forward. So I think that's huge for them going forward.
Fiala is not the player that Granlund is. He's having 60 points while Fiala's having like 40.
Fiala's a guy that you want. Granlund is what Fiala could be at his best.
Exactly.
You already have the best right now, and you're in win-now mode, so why not age up a couple of years?
Exactly. And that's the end of this episode of Stuck in the Sim Bin. Thank you all so much for joining us this week. For Luke Owens, Matt Watling, and our absent Dylan McGlynn, I'm Michael McCormack, and we'll see you next Wednesday on WTOP 10.
Throwing out for Dylan.